Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Tequila Talks. And my special guest for today is a good friend of mine, a business partner, Mr. Rick Trejo. If you don't know him, you know, now you do. What's up, Rick? How are you?
Great, great, man. Thanks for having me on Tequila Talks. I'm excited.
Yes, no, no, most definitely. So, for those that don't know you, let's talk a little bit about your story. How'd you get into real estate?
Sure. So 8 years ago, I was doing sales for a large manufacturing company. And, for me, it was a corporate job and not necessarily the, place that I wanted to forever be. There was a big lack of diversity and inclusion over there for me. I felt like I was alone all the time. I was a sales rep that was on the road for most of the time. I didn't really see my family too much until the end of the day. I didn't interact with anybody other than my customers and, visiting these factories and, selling these products and services, right? And at the end of the day, I was making good money and hitting goal, but I still wasn't happy with, just my inclusion in the company and where I stood with that company, right? So long story short, once you become really good at your job over there, you kind of become a victim of your own success. And I wound up maximizing my goals so much that my goals were unachievable in the last year that I was there, to the point where they were like, "Hey, we have to let you go." So I wound up departing from that company and looking for a different opportunity and something totally different from what I was doing. So I took a leap of faith and went into real estate from there. I latched on with a local company here in Chicago, and the rest is history. 8 years later, I'm here as one of the top producers in Chicago and one of the top 250 in the country. I do a lot of networking. I love what I do. I help, in my community, establishing, households that can build generational wealth through real estate. So for me, that's very empowering. I myself have started to, accumulate property, and me and my wife are starting to build a portfolio now, which is super exciting because now we're landlords, and there is headaches with that, but it's also very rewarding when you see the rent checks come in, and then you see that you have a legacy to leave behind now too, which is something we didn't have when we started 8 years ago. We didn't have anything really to our name other than, just our name, so
Right.
money in the bank and that was it. Now we have money in the bank and we have properties and we have a lifestyle that we're able to lead that, wasn't afforded to us before. So I'm, very happy about what I'm doing now in real estate. I'm at Remax in the Village here in Chicago, and we, um, are a small Remax office, but we are very powerful. Managing broker is the Chicago Association of Realtors president, so I'm very proud of her and very happy to be underneath her and learning from the best in the industry, literally.
Shout outs to Erica. What up? But yeah, man, these 8 years definitely have flown by. I remember first meeting you when you're, newly in the industry, and where you're at now has been definitely proud to see your growth, your success. And it can be done. If you definitely, put 110% into this business, you're going to succeed. A lot of people don't realize it takes hard work. It doesn't come to you. You got to go get it. And you're a perfect example of that. So I'm proud to not only be your business partner, but a close friend of mine. And, and we have a lot in common, and we love what I do, what we do. We have a passion for it, And
Definitely.
I know one of the main topics that we're going to be talking about is NAHREP. I know you're part of the board, not only a member, but you're a board member. But talk to us about NAHREP. How'd you get inspired to be part of NAHREP?
Sure. For those of you who don't know what NAHREP is, it's the National Association of Hispanic Real Estate Professionals. It's the largest Latino business organization in the country with over 50,000 real estate professionals and over 100 local chapters. I myself am one of the board of directors for the Chicago chapter. I am the director for government affairs for 2025. But basically, with NAHREP, what we do, our mission is to advance sustainable home ownership and economic mobility for Latinos in the U.S. we see home ownership as basically the number one tool for bridging the gap, so getting people from, you know, the lower threshold into the middle class and even into
Hmm.
the sometimes the upper echelons, where you can start to really gain traction and create that generational wealth. So Latino homeowners are, you know, our passion, so that's what we really want to do is just help to advance that any way possible.
No, absolutely. Um, for those who aren't familiar with NAHREP, I know you mentioned what. Why is it the mission so important to you professionally and personally?
Like I was telling you when I before I joined the real estate industry, that was a real big gap for me for identifying with my culture and with people who looked like me, who were in my same shoes, in my same space, right? It's hard when you're in a corporate industry to really break through and have somebody understand you and to speak your language, not just Spanish, but just your language in general, and understand some of the trials, the tribulations, and the things that come with being a Latino just in general, right? So when you're surrounded by industry professionals that do what you do and do it in the same areas that you do, and they all have the same challenges, and we're not in competition, we're actually in collaboration at this point, working together, networking, and just putting our heads together so that we can all overcome some of the bigger issues that are at play. NAREP in general has some policy priorities, and with that, it helps to guide our local initiatives as far as what we're able to do and advocate for, not only ourselves, as real estate professionals, but also for our clients, also for just the future of what the real estate industry is going to be, number one, in our families too. I mean, we're setting the seeds of success for our kids, right? So it's real important that we act now to do that. So that's what NAREP does for us, is kind of gives us the roadmap in order to do that.
No, absolutely. I know not so long ago you just came back from Washington, D.C. Tell us how that experience was. What did you learn? Give us some tidbits.
Yeah, so we had our national policy priority conference, and it was an amazing experience to say the least. This was my first one that I ever attended, and with that, we were able to connect with a lot of like-minded individuals there, where we discussed not only the priorities, but we also connected with some of the um, senators and congressmen that we are constituents of, right? So I myself met with the staff for Congressman Chuy Garcia, who is our local representative here in Chicago. And then we went from there and walked over to another building where met with the staff for Senator Dick Durbin, who's also a big ally for us in just advocating for the needs of the Latino community that he represents, right? So he was a big advocate for DACA when DACA first came out. And Chuy Garcia is obviously one of the most powerful Hispanic congressmen in the country. So just being able to rub shoulders with them and their staff and just have somebody actually hear you out, it's very empowering, right? So they can understand what we're going through on a local level so that they can take it back to their chambers and echo those same sentiments to some of their other people that are in there. It's a very divisive time in our nation, and for us to go through in such force and such loud, boisterous ways that we are, because we're Latinos, we're not quiet about anything, right? We
Right.
went over there and we made some noise and we let them know that we were there. And, they understood, everybody who was part of NAREP that was there understood the assignment. They showed up and they showed out. And, the message was definitely delivered, so I'm very proud to have been part of that.
No, that's awesome, man. Let's talk about Latino homeownership today. NAREP talks about a lot about homeownership is a pathway to wealth. How have you seen that play out firsthand when you work with Latino families?
Well, I mean, when you talk about it, Latino families in general are what I typically work with. That's probably the demographic that covers most of my business. I also work with African American families. I work with, Caucasian families. I work with everybody, right? But at the end of the day, I focus on a specific area here in Chicago in a pocket that is going to primarily be that. So I understand the ins and outs of, some of the challenges that they might face when it comes to it. But, in general, in the country, you're seeing, 49% growth in the Hispanic homeownership community, which is huge. That's over 9.8 million new homeowners that are Latinos, but that doesn't come without challenge, right? Because there's so many other things that are tied to, a Latino actually getting into that. We have things like DACA, for instance, which is soon to go away, and that's going to be another challenge that we'll have to figure out how to work with. We have things like undocumented buyers who are using, ITINs to buy. And with an ITIN, obviously, it's not your standard um, loan program that you're going to be using. You're usually putting more down. You're having to pay more for your loan over the long term. But those are some of the most loyal buyers that we have. Those are some of the loans that never foreclose, because they understood what it took to get there, right? How much money they had to save, the people that they had to find and connect with, because it doesn't happen overnight. Some of those loans actually take a longer time to close,
Hmm.
and just some of the challenges that come with it, right? Uh, just sometimes you come into contact with people that are just not willing to work with Latinos, whether it's you, the agent, or your buyer. You see, appraisals that come, lower just because, or conditions just because, and it's unfair, and we're really trying to work towards eliminating a lot of those barriers so that we can all be on the level playing field with each other, right? There shouldn't be that type of bias in our industry anymore, and NAHREP has really made an effort to change that. You still see some here and there, but at the end of the day, we're making strides towards getting it done. But here in Chicago, I can tell you a little bit about what we have going on here, which is really, tying back into our priorities, and let you know a little bit about that. But affordability is obviously, one of our big issues right now, right? You've seen we're in a housing crisis if you didn't know. And the housing crisis is availability and affordability. Those are the two things that are affecting us the most right now, right? Um, it's hard to find a house in the community that you want to live in. I have a lot of people that say, "Hey, I want to live in Garfield Ridge. Hey, I want to live in West Lawn. Hey, I want to live in Burbank. I want to live in Oak Lawn. I want to live in Berwyn." And when we look at the houses for what they're pre-approved for, a lot of the times it's not necessarily that the house isn't there, but maybe they can't afford it, and that's because we have issues like high tax bills that are going to take them right out of the running for that property, or there might be a condition where as a buyer that needs to buy something that's safe and move-in ready, that house isn't safe and move-in ready, right? There might be broken windows, there might be updates that need to get done to that property. A lot of factors that play into that, right? So you know tax is real critical right now. We need to work with some of our local officials here in Cook County to understand what some of those things they can do to help, right? The other things, obviously, you have people who are trying to maybe house hack, right, and buy that 2 unit, 3 unit property, right? And again, there's not a lot of them available. A lot of people are holding back right now from actually listing their property because if they sell their property, where are they going to go and what are they going to do? Right. So builders are holding back from building new properties because there isn't necessarily anything that they want to put their hand in and their money in because they're not incentivized to do it right now. So that's where we're working with people to get that done as well. Where there might be an incentive for a builder to invest in a community that doesn't have necessarily those options available to them. So imagine if all of a sudden a crop of 20 new single family homes or condos popped up out of nowhere, and all of a sudden the community had options to invest in and they were affordable. The investor, the developer, they make money. The realtors make money, the loan officers make money, the homeowners are going to be happy because they're going to start to accumulate and generate wealth. So it's all a
Hmm.
domino effect. So it's really important that we get that infill of development, that support from our local government, so we can increase the housing supply and really, really, really help out our communities to grow.
I agree. I agree 110% with you.
Mhm.
Right now, I'm reading this stat that a lot of you people don't know this. Latino homeowners have 26 times the wealth of Latino renters. What does that stat say about the power of owning a home?
That if it's I can go back to having conversations with renters who talk to me about interest rates, right? And they reflect on, hey, that interest rate right now, it's at 6.5%. That's so high. That's so high. And it's like, oh really? What's your interest rate right now? You rent your home, right? Well, yeah, but I don't have one. Oh, yes, you do. You pay 100% interest. You do not own your property. So at that point, you're not building equity. And even though this new generation of home buyers is paying at 6%, once that rate goes down, if they're in a position to refi, guess what they're going to do? They're going to refi. At the end of the day, if they want to go ahead and sell that home and then go to the next property, they can do that. And what's going to happen? They're going to cash out and they're going to be able to capitalize on the equity gain. Because every year, at
Mm-hmm.
average, we're going 4 to 5% additional, right? So I can give you an example for me. I bought my home in 2021 for like $320,000. If I sold it today, I could probably sell it for 400,000. So that's 4 years and what? Do the math, $80,000 in equity that I gained plus whatever I've paid down off my mortgage. It's a pretty good deal. I don't know anybody else that's going to give you $100,000 just because.
Right? No, I agree. And, I mean, as a homeowner and landlord myself, it's amazing. People don't realize what real estate can do for you. And a lot of people just are too scared. They have a lot of fear, which is understandable. But
Maybe
at the end
just
of
a
the day,
lack of understanding and maybe just not the right voice in their ear. Sometimes they listen to that primo, that tia, that friend that bought 100 years ago, right? During the crash or during the pandemic or whenever it was that they bought, which was a totally different market at that time. You have to understand that real estate is a roller coaster. It's up, it's down, and it's everywhere else. So when those times come, you have to make sure that you're working with a professional who understands those ebbs and those flows, those ups and those downs. You know, you wouldn't want to invest with somebody who just does it as a hobby, right? You want to have the knowledge that that person is looking out for your best interest and they're doing their, responsibility by understanding your needs and also what the current conditions of the market are. Because if you're not doing that, then you're putting yourself at a disservice.
no, you're right. No, absolutely. That's why, yeah, you have to talk to the licensed professionals, us, you know what I mean? And we'll give you great information. I mean, we have several years of experience in this industry, so, we're here to guide you, which is the most important part. And I know you touched earlier about affordability. Yeah, when prices are up, inventory is low. How has that housing affordability impacted your ability to help the first-time home buyers?
It's tough because a lot of people can get discouraged really quick when they're out there making offers on properties and they're getting outbid. Their offers are getting rejected. And, we set the table right from the beginning with all of our clients when we let them know, like, hey, you know, you are not the only one out here looking to buy a house. You are not the only one that's pre-approved for the amount that you're pre-approved for. There might be people that are pre-approved for more that are looking at the same house as you, and they can afford to go that much higher. If it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And I don't want you to make an offer that puts you at an economic disadvantage in the future because you can't afford it later. We want to make sure that you have the right solution, right? So we average anywhere from 30 to 40 closings a year, and most of those are buyers. And I can honestly say that none of my buyers have ever called me saying that they're in a position where they're going to lose their house because we did right by them by putting them in a property that makes sense for them financially, that they're not in a position to, you know, have to foreclose or short sale, you know, walk away from a property with no equity. None of that. No, we want to make sure that every solution is the right solution every time. So we have those tough conversations sometimes, and we have some very hard-headed clients sometimes that still want to make the move that they want to make. And at the end of the day, we know that we're still doing our job by having those conversations with them, and there's checks and balances in play. Obviously, you as a loan officer, I know that you see it a lot. When the buyer falls in love with that home, and then as you're doing your automatic underwriting, you're like, oh, what's this? Oh, hold on, now we got to pivot. Hold on, there you need a different type of insurance now because this isn't a flood zone. Oh, hold on, the tax bills just went up because it lost the senior exemption. Oh, hold on, you have something going on with your work where you're not working as many hours. So there's a lot of things that are in play, and this is a constantly
Mhm.
revolving or a moving puzzle piece, right? So we just need to make sure that we do it right.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Um, let's get back to a little bit about NAHREP. What are some solutions NAHREP is pushing that can make a real difference?
One of the big things that we're really advocating for is access to fair credit and an inclusive credit system. It's essential, basically, for empowering the Latino home buyer. When we expand the credit access and affordability, it can help bridge the homeowner gap, right? So, modernizing credit scores and promoting like a different credit model, for example, like the FICO 10T, the Vantage score, those things like that, right? That reflect a more nuanced understanding for a finance buyer. Um, the inclusive underwriting. So, we have a lot of things going on, right? And, you've seen it yourself when you're working with a Latino, especially when those tandas pop up, right? Those big deposits come in and they
Yeah.
come out, right? Having somebody to understand that. Special purpose credit programs advocating for the increased capacity to serve some of our, lower to moderate communities. Those are important. Those are critical for helping people get that down payment assistance, right? Things like that. Um, Affordable housing programs from some of our federal home loan banks. Um, Reduced fees. Some of these fees that you see on the closing disclosures just can be astronomical at times, right? And we don't understand why. We just kind of pass that buck to the buyer and say, "Hey, good luck." You know, but if we could maybe reduce some of those fees, right, and eliminate them entirely, even because sometimes they don't even need to be there, right? But those are some things that we're working at the credit level. And advocating for stuff like that. So I know we have a lot of Congress people that are trying to pass bills to support things like that, just like removing the junk fees and stuff like that on the title. Um, and then obviously just working with industry professionals is another big thing that we're trying to do with industry best practices, right? That's another one of our big priorities. Um, Protecting buyer representatives is key right now, right? We lost in court last year with the whole decision to um, the buyer agency agreement, basically, right? So with that, we just want to make sure that buyers' representatives are protected so that it ensures equitable access to the real estate representation, right? The seller agent should not be controlling everything. And the way that the court system tried to play us last year was they tried to almost eliminate us entirely, right? And it's not going to work because it's a disservice to the buyer itself, right? The buyer deserves to be represented in the best way possible. And they can only do that by maintaining their own representation and not being forced to work with somebody, right? And then obviously we have new things going on too, clear cooperation. Right now, there's some big players in our industry that are basically saying they don't want to, showcase their listings through the MLS anymore. They don't want to put their stuff on, some of the public platforms like Zillow or Redfin, right? And some of those public platforms are now firing back, and they're saying, okay, well, if you don't want to do that, then we'll never showcase any of your stuff. So you can expect never to have any cooperation from us either. So it's like a little Cold War going on right now with some of the bigger players. And honestly, like, it's going to hurt them at the end of the day because we all want to succeed. This is not real estate should never be adversarial, right? It should always be cooperative. We should be wanting to win. We want your seller to make money and we want our buyer to get into the house. And at the end of the day, if we all get to the closing table and we all become best friends, what's wrong with that, right?
I agree. No, definitely. It's just, the sun shines for everybody. There's enough business for all of us. And, I know we're talking about best practices. Is there a gap between what's taught and what's practiced?
Yeah, and I think that more training is definitely needed. There's a lot of people that get into this industry, and you can check the stats for yourself, but this is an industry where the fail rate is almost at 80%. If you look at the stats from last year, 70% of realtors did not close one transaction. So if you close at least one transaction, you can consider yourself in the top 30% of your industry. That's crazy. You
Wow.
know, so again, just because you closed one doesn't mean you're a great realtor. So you definitely need to train better. You definitely need to understand the nuances, all the changes that are constantly happening in our industry, right? We do a good job at Remax. We do a good job at Chicago Association of Realtors, and then also locally with NAHREP and nationally with NAHREP. So if you're involved in any of those types of platforms, you're getting some of the best training that's available, and we definitely encourage it. Because we always have a speaker lined up to just teach you some of the things that you might not know, right? Taxation. Yesterday, I had a great conversation with Cook County Assessor's Office where they informed of some of the different tax exemption codes that we can apply and how they're applied and who qualifies. Those are things that I didn't know off the top. So, having that conversation with them opened my eyes, and it actually gave me an opportunity to call some of my past clients and tell them, hey, did you know that you qualify for this? And they said, no, give me more info. And I gave them the link. They went ahead and they applied, and now they're going to be saving a ton of money on their costs because of those exemptions that they were not getting it. Right. So it's an opportunity for us to engage more. That creates loyalty, that creates an opportunity to then maybe get a referral, so that I can be remaining in that top percentile, right? I don't want to be one of those 70% that didn't sell a house. I want to be in that top percent always.
Oh, for
So
sure.
mhm.
So I know we're touching a little bit about that. What advice would you give those 70% agents right now?
Mentorship is probably going to be key. And networking obviously is the next thing that you got to work on, right? For me, fresh out the box when I got my license, I didn't have anybody right away, so I had to look around and kind of feel my way out. I stumbled a little bit, and then I had somebody catch me at my old brokerage, and then they helped me to understand what I needed, what I was lacking on. I joined a team. That team was able to help me just build better practices for myself and just understand the gap that I had, and then I was able to establish a base. And then from that base, I started building more with the networking and the things that I was doing locally through NAREP and through some of my other networking opportunities, right? So, working with somebody like you, was critical for my growth as well, because at that point, I knew I had a partner that I could trust, and that understood the challenges that I was working with the buyers that I had, right? Not every lender and realtor are the right fit for each other. Sometimes, you have pieces that don't necessarily fit. So for us, we kind of gelled. It worked out great. And, 8 years later, we're still here, surviving and thriving, right? So I appreciate, what I got from you for sure, because it was great. And I encourage people to either reach out to you or anybody in your company, because Neighborhood Loans is a phenomenal company to work with. The underwriting process is amazing. I have other loan partners too, but I'm not advocating for nobody else right now. I'm just me.
There you go. For those 70 percenters out there, get a mentor, possibly join a team, join these organizations, network, and get yourself a trusted partner. You know what I mean? That, no, definitely can collaborate, mastermind. It's just not about, give and take and whatnot. There's more to it. It's a relationship. It's about meeting, constantly talking, giving pointers to each other, what's going on out there, any new programs, but yeah, masterminding is huge, especially in this industry. Um, but yeah, no, I mean, this is great, man. For people that want to join NAREP, what do they have to do?
They can either reach out to me directly on Instagram or Facebook, and I'll provide them a link, or they can just go to our website. It's nahrepchicago.com. If you Google it, I'm sure that it will pop up, and there's a link to join. The membership is $49, and that gives you a standard membership where you'll be able to attend some of our free events that we have locally. We have one coming up May 7th, which is our educational event beyond the sale. We're going to have some wonderful speakers. I myself, I'm going to be talking a little bit about the policy priorities that were released for our home ownership report and go over some of the key stats and facts with my other co-director, Liza. So we're really excited to bring that information. We have some other speakers lined up like Erica Villegas, my managing broker. She's also involved with international sales with a company called Ciudad Maderas, and they are going to educate us on how to sell and buy property in Mexico, new developments that they're working on over there in both Cancun and Merida in
Ooh.
the Yucatan Peninsula down there in Mexico. So it's actually really exciting information that you're going to get. And we're going to have an AI specialist also that's going to go over some of the new technology that's out there to help you to modernize your business. So it's a jam-packed session. It's going to be at the Peninsula in Hyde Park. So I highly, highly, highly encourage you to attend if you can.
Yeah, no, you got to definitely attend with a purpose. Make sure you take your notes, listen. That's to learn. You know what I mean? It's not to I mean, there's time for networking and mingling, but it's to really take it serious. Sit down, learn. Take notes, and man, you get a lot of tidbits. I've learned a lot from man over 10 years of being an NAHREP member, and NAHREP has definitely opened a lot of my doors, a lot of doors to me. And it's been very helpful. So if you're not a member, I definitely strongly suggest you become one. It's worth every penny. Let's quickly touch on these macroeconomic issues. I love this question. How do big picture economic trends like interest rates, inflation, or wage growth affect Hispanic homeownership?
I mean, it's an ever evolving, system that we have going on, right? And for us, it's increasing funding is going to be critical for housing, counseling, financial literacy programs to empower Latino households, and also, just supporting some of these Latino-owned businesses too. A lot of our buyers are what's going on with them. They're self proprietors, right? So it's like you have, your concrete masons, you have your landscapers, and where are the programs for them, right? So we need to, increase some of that ownership, and help them to get into the right platforms too. And the other thing that we're really trying to do with macroeconomic issues is immigration reform, right? So that's a huge hot button topic right now, but it's one that needs to be touched, right? We need to advocate for more pathways to citizenship and protect some of our DACA recipients that are getting that removed from them, right? Expand work visas. Did you know that in the construction industry right now, over 54% of the construction industry is undocumented?
Wow, that's
That's
high.
crazy. So if you start deporting all these people like he's planning on doing, who's going to build these houses, right? That's a huge question that I have that nobody has an answer to because I don't see anybody on our side picking up any of the slack that we are doing as, Latinos that are out there busting their ass to get it done, right? And, there's like a gap right now of like 7, 8 million homes that needs to be filled in order to satisfy the gap that we have right now for available homes to be sold, right? And if you start reporting these people, that gap is only going to get bigger. So, we need to work on expanding the programs that help these people to get visas, right? Because the labor shortages are just going to they're going to continue and they're going to, affect other industries too. So, we definitely need to, protect our people. Um,
100%.
Asset protection is another thing too. We need to promote estate planning and safeguard, what we do have right now for the generational wealth that comes, right? Because a lot of times there's no succession plan. If something happens, right? In the event that, mom or dad goes, what happens? The kids have to fight it out for who gets it? No, it goes into, all of this probate, right? And then there's money lost paying lawyers. There's, time lost trying to figure out and sort through all of the stuff, right? Versus just having, the right protections in place so that people, can have a pathway, right? Like, I want you as my executor so that you can make the decisions. I want you to take the ownership from there. And then we can move on from there and utilize those platforms to do other things after that, right?
No, yeah, absolutely. What is something that agents and loan officers should be paying more attention to when it comes to macroeconomic shifts?
It's a great question, bro. I mean, right now it's just what's going on with Congress and how they're doing stuff over there right now. Because as they move, so does everything else, right? I mean, the bond markets are going crazy, right, and interest rates are going up and down. So how those things are regulated affects everything else. So just having those hard conversations with our clients and maybe pushing them a little bit more to get things done quicker because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, there's uncertainties, obviously. Let's touch a little bit about networking. We did talk about it, but just give us why is it still one of the most underrated tools in the industry, networking.
There's a very big misconception with networking. A lot of people that come into it look at it as an opportunity to maybe party, maybe go out for a drink with other people. Some of that is there, don't get me wrong. But if you're doing it at its true essence, you're doing it with the intention of actually adding something to your repertoire, right? Adding more knowledge to your skill set, adding, just more tools, right? That's what you should be doing when you're networking. You shouldn't be looking to get messed up with your boys, right? Because you're only going to make yourself look bad, amongst your peers and your professionals, right? So you really want to make sure that you're doing it right when you're doing it and doing it with the right people. They say your network is your net worth. And that's never been more true. I feel like, since I've been doing this networking, it's helped open doors for me that, when I'm in multiple offer situations, and like I said, I work on the side of town where I know a lot of the other producers. So when a property comes up, hey, I give them a call. Hey, I got a buyer for that one. Before you start showing it, let me take my buyer over there real quick. We might even get to the property before everybody else even does, right? Or there might be an opportunity where we're in a multiple offer situation, and our terms might be the exact same as somebody else's, but because that other agent knows that I do my job great and that I know my stuff and that I'm working with George Flores or one of my other really good partners, that they do their good job well, as then why wouldn't they go with us versus the guy that they never met before and says that they know what they're doing, right? I would probably lean that route too.
Yeah, no, at times it's not what you know, it's who you know. You know what I mean? So
Clean,
that's
bro.
why, you can put the face to a lot of these agents that are could be on the listing side as well, you know what I mean? And spark up some good, healthy conversations. That helped me in my career too, this networking, and that's why, I still do it to this day. Um, a couple other questions and we can wrap it up. What does being a full service agent really mean today?
It's going above and beyond. It doesn't just start, when the lead picks up the phone and calls you, right? I mean, you have to be planting seeds from the beginning and then after that, right? So for me as a full service professional, people understand that I am an industry professional. I do real estate full time. I'm not a part timer. Um, and that I am actively engaged in making sure that I meet whatever need it is that you have, whether it's selling your home, pricing it accordingly, strategizing with you, because we don't just throw stuff on the MLS to throw stuff on the MLS. We don't just take pictures with our cell phones and then just say, hey, well, let's figure out if it sells or not. No, no, no. We don't shoot our shot here. We actually have an executed game plan that we work from start to finish. And it's all transparent too, because I shouldn't be keeping secrets from you because I work for you. You don't work for me, right? So as a full service professional, I need to be available to you at the appropriate work hours, obviously, and then to answer any questions you have, because this is probably one of the biggest things that you've ever done is buying or selling a home, right? So with that, you want to make sure that the person that's working for you has got your best intentions in mind when they're doing it. So executing that game plan flawlessly, showing you my worth, my value, showing you the tools that I use, showing you the professionals that I work with, and getting you actively engaged so that there's no gap in between when we meet versus when we close. And it goes even beyond that after the close, right? What happens after the close? A lot of times you get the keys at closing, you take a closing picture, here's your bottle, thanks, and then you leave and you never talk to them again. At least that's what some people do. I don't do that. So you usually hear from me on a regular basis, whether it's via email, via text, via call. I do it all, right? And I want to make sure that you know I'm checking in on you at least once, twice, three times a year. You're going to hear from me on your anniversary. You're going to hear from me on your birthday. You're going to hear from me on your kids' birthdays. You're going to hear from me when it's time to review your insurance. You're going to hear from me when rates are at an all-time low again. And hey, why don't you call George so you can refi, right? Things like that. That I'm going to be delivering this information to you so that have everything at your fingertips and ready to go. I get calls from clients that I got 8 years ago that ask me, "Hey, Rick, my roof is starting to leak a little bit. Do you have a roofer?" Of course I do. Let me introduce you to him. This is one of my trusted roofers right here, and he does a great job. Working with me. Actually, you're probably gonna get a discount. So reach out to him and see what he can do for you. Right? Plumbers, you know, security people, you name it. Garage door repairmen, landscapers, lenders, insurance agents, like the whole purpose of me doing the networking that I do is to build a book of business and to
Mm-hmm.
actually be able to provide my clients with that same information and those same tools and resources that I have so that there's no gap, right? That's what being a full service professional is for me, right? So just understanding the needs of every client every time and being able to deliver for them.
No, for sure. Rick, you're a realtor for life. There you go. And then when you're not doing real estate, brother, what do you like to do for fun? What's your what does Rick like to do?
Life is always crazy with a 12-year-old. So I have a son. He's 12 years old. He's in the autism spectrum, so you never know what you're going to get with him. He could have good days, he can have bad days, and days in between that too. But he's our little, ray of sunshine, and it's always fun. We love going to White Sox games, Bulls games, movies, just walks in the park, all kinds of stuff like that. I'm trying to groom him for success, obviously, and show him some of the ropes here, and maybe he can be an entrepreneur in the future. So we'll see, But
Awesome.
12 years old, sometimes he's like, "Dad, what's going on? Why are you always on the phone? Dad, can we go play now?" But that's really when I'm not focused on, that it's hanging out with my wife and my son and just making sure that our family is set for success, right? Like I said, we like to do investing too, so we're always looking for new properties. We're always looking to, better our portfolio if we can. So, if you got something good, let me know.
Yeah, no, it's important. Family time is
Yeah.
very important. You need a little balance in your life, especially in this industry that can be chaotic, stressful, and like you said, roller coaster. I'm not a fan of roller coasters. My stomach, my insides can't handle it. But hey, I've been surviving this roller coaster ride. You know what I mean? So it's
Was
it's
it
it's
20,
it's been
25
awesome.
years or something like that, bro?
28. It's going on 28 years this summer.
20
So
years? Yeah,
yeah,
that's the longest roller coaster ride I've seen so
yeah,
far.
yeah. It's a long roller coaster ride, but hey, I was born to do this, so I love it. And also, lastly, I wanted to make sure. Did he get a little gift I sent you?
Yeah, little
Did you
black
get it?
box. Hmm.
Little something, something. I don't know. You want to open it and show us what you got?
Let's
Because
see.
I like to end the shows with a little, shot of success. Yeah,
Yeah, I like it.
a little reposado. There you go.
Do
It
that
is
work.
past 12 o'clock, so
It's 5 o'clock somewhere,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So
Salud, bro.
cheers, Rick. Thank you so much. I appreciate all the info, all the insights, everything you've shared with us. Ah, ready to, you know,
Good, bro.
kill the rest of the day. But thank you so much, and I look forward to having you again on Tequila Talks.
Thanks, bro.
All right. Peace out.
Take it
Adios.
easy.
All right.